then verse 8. So we're in Daniel chapter 7, verse 7, and then verse 8. While I was contemplating the horns, behold, another horn, a little one, came up among them. Now this is one of the first or early times that we see the Antichrist. Here he's called the little horn. And but if you've studied prophecy, you probably know that the little horn is one of the names of the Antichrist. Now, he starts out as a little horn, but does he remain a little horn? He will become the king of the world. He will be the ruler of the world. Even though the world is going to have a government that's going to have 10 regions, it's going to have 10 kings that narrow down to 7. This is how it narrows down to 7. A little horn comes up among them, and it's a possibility that the reason he's a little horn is because his nation has been destroyed or disabled. Excuse me. I'll clip that out too, I hope. But he's a little horn, and it might be that this will be because of after his this event where he is killed by the sword and comes back to life. During that period of time, that his nation will have been disabled, but then he will rise up and very quickly come back to strength. So a little horn came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were pulled out by the roots before it. And behold, this horn possessed eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth uttering great boast. Now, on and on and on, everywhere that you see the Antichrist, you can identify him by this, and that is that he has a mouth uttering great boast. He blasphemes God, he blasphemes the tabernacle, he blasphemes the host of heaven, he blasphemes everything. He has the eyes of a man, but he has a mouth that is that sees himself as much bigger than what he is. And Daniel 7:25. Now earlier I pointed to 24 as an interpretation of the earlier passage. Now in verse 25 it says, "As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings will arise, and another will arise after them. He will be different from the previous ones and will subdue 3 kings." Now, when Daniel saw the vision, what did he see? He saw 3 of the horns pulled out. But here, he says he will subdue. And so the word subdue can means make them miniaturized. In other words, bring them under control or bring them under his authority. So you could imagine it being like this. Maybe that there will be, say, 3 regions or 4 regions even, and he will be over one of those. But he will take charge of these kings and bring them under his control. That's what will give him the power base that he will have, that he will bring together these under his control. He will subdue them. It doesn't mean that he kills them or destroys them, but necessarily he may. I'm not saying that he doesn't, but I'm just saying that's not necessarily what it means then when it says that he subdues them, because to subdue them can mean just to put them down, to put them under control. Okay, so that's jumping back now to Revelation. Revelation chapter 13. We were in chapter 12 now, into verse 13, verse 1. "The dragon stood on the seashore. Then I saw the beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads." So you can see that from Daniel we're to the exact same place in Revelation. That's why I wanted to bring that in right at that point. So the dragon, it says that this has stood on the seashore, meaning the dragon stood over, contemplating all of humanity. So when this war takes place in heaven, Satan is going to finally realize he's come to his point. It probably will take place when the covenant is confirmed by the person who will become the Antichrist. It may be at that point, or it may be something in that. I don't know exactly what, but when God will finally release it, but it's going to become obvious that we've reached that point, there's going to be a war in heaven. Now, when Satan is cast to the earth, he stands on the seashore looking out over humanity, and then he sees, John sees this vision. It's not Daniel's, John, but Then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads. So the description he's drawing from Daniel chapter 7. On his horns were 10 diadems, and on his heads were blasphemous names. Why 10 diadems if there's only 7 heads? Because that there are still, even though there are 10 kings, 3 of those have been brought under subjection. So their crowns still exist, but their power are brought under the one. So he has 10 horns, but he has the 7 heads, and those might be whether they're continents or divisions, however they're divided up. There will probably be regions, but there will be crowns for all of those 10 regions, but one will have control of 4 of those crowns, in other words. And then on his heads were blasphemous names, meaning names that would be probably names of gods or something of that sort. Verse 2, the beast which I saw was like a leopard, and his feet like those of a bear, his mouth like the mouth of the lion. So the body of the beast is a leopard, which I have explained that I believe that the leopard described in Daniel chapter 7, in the early part of it, as being black with 4 sets of wings. And in Revelation 6, it's the rider on the black horse, and again, black being his color, and he brings famine to the earth. It's going to be a time when much of the earth will starve. In other words, where that the amount of food that a man can make in a day would be a quart of wheat for a denarius, or for a day's wage, and 3 quarts of barley for a day's wage. Enough barley to feed a family of maybe 3 or 4 on a day's wage, and enough wheat to feed 1 person on a day's wage. That's what it would amount to. So that's the rider on the black horse. So the dragon, that's the body. That's what the body's going to be. But it will have the feet like those of the bear. What was the Russian communist military will probably be its feet, and its mouth will be the mouth of the lion. And I think that means the words as well as this blasphemy, the terrible words that will be coming from his mouth. But notice the dragon gave him his power and his throne and his great authority. Three things there. What? Power, throne, and authority. So this is for a limited amount of time, very limited amount of time, for 42 months. And that's how much time the dragon has. It's how much time the dragon gives to the Antichrist, is 42 months. So the dragon gave him his power, throne, and great authority. I saw one of his heads as it had been slain, and his fatal wound was healed. So we've talked about this to some degree, but his wound, fatal wound, and we discuss if it's a fatal wound, does that mean necessarily that it is fatal? Normally you would say yes, but in several translations it says his deadly head wound was healed. You can have a deadly head wound without being killed. However, it would appear to me that if he's not killed, and if it's not pretty well established that the head was dead, in other words, if he hadn't been killed, then it would not be such a miracle that people would say, who can do war with him? If you can't kill him, if he just comes back to life, how are you going to be able to do war with him? And so no one is going to be willing to fight with him because of that. His deadly or fatal wound was healed, and the whole earth was amazed. And now the earth is amazed because that his wound is healed, because that he's brought back to life. That's the amazement that they have. I don't know exactly how that's going to be done. I don't know if it's going to be done with trickery. I don't know if it's going to be done through sorcery. I think it's going to be done through a process that will at least have every appearance of being real. In other words, that he will be actually dead. That will be established, and then he will be brought back to life. Whether he is actually dead or not, who knows? But everyone will agree, I think, that he was dead and is brought back to life when this time comes. have mentioned to you where it talks about his fatal wound was healed. In Zechariah chapter 11, verse 17, just before the war that's coming, where it talks about all the nations gathering against Israel, and that's in Zechariah chapter 12, verse 1, and following those verses. Just prior to that, there's a strange statement that people have interpreted a lot of different ways, but it's a strange statement just prior to that.